you have both a curse and a blessing. In this particular way, I think it is a blessing, because what's going to happen is that you are going to eventually, if you do the work, this is going to take a lot of work, and to be completely frank, you're going to have to do a lot more work than the average person, but I think you already knew that. So you need to accept your fate, and you need to accept that challenge, because in the end, you are still a man. Hey guys, Hector Castillo from girlschase.com. I'm making this video because I have had clients who are on the autism spectrum or have Asperger's, which is a lighter form of autism. And I've seen the way that their minds work, and I've spent time with them, and I've had experience with it in the rest of my life, and have come to, I believe, understand it to a degree that allows me to help those who have it. Now, I am not an expert on this. I don't have a degree, no certifications that make me an expert in a formal way. What I hope this video is going to do, however, is give you a more raw, practical insight into your own mind through the lens of someone who doesn't have autism and who has come to try and understand it for the sake of helping those who do have it, and who has had success in helping those who have had it. And so this is not going to be a scientific video where I go over exactly what it is. It's going to be a video on, and I'm not going to be able to fix it. What I'm going to be able to do, because it's not something that necessarily needs to be fixed, and I want to go into that as well. This video is to give you a practical understanding of what happens when you are autistic. Maybe you have a great understanding of it, maybe you don't. Maybe you're not even aware that you have it. I've met some people who weren't aware that they're on the spectrum, but once I started to point out some of the things, they started to say, oh, okay, that lines up with my experience. And when I started adapting to teaching them in the way that I know appeals to and works with those who are on the spectrum, they saw more success. And so I want to give you a practical application, practical tools to use your autism. Because as I understand it, personally, for instance, I have OCD, and I will make a separate video about that as well to help those with that. But what I've come to understand about my own disorder, if you want to call it that, in some ways it is a blessing, and in some ways it is a curse. But I can use what makes it a curse and turn it into a blessing. If I use my hyperactive focusing on things and obsession with things in a negative way, I'll go in negative directions. If I use it in a positive way, I'll go in positive directions, but I have to learn how to control it. So the same with autism is how I see it. It can be a curse, but it can also be a blessing. And it can allow you to do things that a normal person, someone who doesn't have whatever it is on the deeper neurological, biological level, that they can't do. You can do something that they can't do. You can achieve heights of knowledge and understanding that they will never be able to appreciate. While at the same time, there will be types of thinking and certain understandings that you will never be able to have. But that's okay, because in the end, as I said, this is a practical guide. You can still live a life that has the things that maybe you didn't have and don't yet have, that you see normal people having, but because you knew the steps to get yourself there, you can have it. So when I first encountered autism, I was at my Taekwondo dojo, and I was helping some of the younger kids with their forms. And one of the children that I was helping, I could tell something was different about him. And having OCD, I'm very detail-oriented. And so I wanted to help every little thing that he was doing. The problem with that is that how I see what autism does is that there's an overstimulus going on. And too many things at once can overwhelm the person, especially he was a kid. So his attention wasn't able to focus completely 100% on every little detail I was going after. And my instructor came over and he kind of pulled me to the side and he said, hey, with him, You want to take things slow, and you want to explain things very mechanically. Don't do too much at once. Give him one step to do, and then another step, and then another step, and then he'll be able to put it all together in the end. I said, okay. Now, I didn't know what autism was at the time, but he was autistic. Then fast forward to when I was in university, and I was a summer camp counselor, kind of. And there was one kid who was the son of a religion professor, because I studied philosophy and religion. And I knew that he was the stepson of this professor, but I'd never met him. But I knew at this point what autism was, and I could tell the signs of it. And the other counselors, they couldn't get through to him. They would try to have conversations with him, and it wouldn't work out. And one of them even expressed her frustration because she was very sweet and she wanted to connect with him. And she said it's really hard to have a conversation with him because he just gets lost in the conversation and won't pay attention to certain things. I said, okay, well, maybe you're just not talking about what he wants to talk about, and you're not talking about it in the language that he uses. And so one day I saw him walking, and I just said, hey, how are you? And I said, I actually know your stepfather, and I'm a counselor here, as you know, and yeah, just how are you? And we started talking, and I saw how he fidgeted with his fingers. And I do similar things with my OCD, and I kind of have like my own little rituals. And I saw it as a way for him it was something for him to focus on. It was some game for him to play to kind of blueprint his reality in the current moment. And as I talked to him, well, in the end, he's still a person, of course, so he wants to talk about the things that he wants to talk about. So he started talking about something, and I followed his thread of conversation where he wanted to go. And I could tell because I could read his body language, and I could understand what he liked to talk about. And as I followed what he wanted to talk about and allowed him to go into various details about whatever it is he wanted to talk about, I saw how his mind just worked, and like this library of information just flowed, and the way his logic was progressing was, it was more advanced than most people. He was a smart kid. It was a summer camp for gifted children, but he was even another step further. And we ended up getting in like a hour conversation, just like that. It just happened. And after he left, the girl came over and she said, what was that? And I said, what do you mean? And she said, I've never been able to have a conversation with him for more than 5 minutes before he gets distracted, or I just don't know how to communicate with him. And I just told her, I said, well, he thinks differently, and you have to adapt to that. And you also need to talk about what he wants to talk about, very simply. Then fast forward years later when I'm coaching clients. And I started having clients who are on the spectrum. And I would try to teach them in a way that was appealing to people who have the normal emotive instincts and the normal ability to read body language and social cues. And I would also speak very metaphorically. I like to speak in metaphors. Now, the problem with this is, as I found out, was that when you have autism, the biggest issue is that you can't read body language so well, and you can't read vocal tonalities, and you can't understand, and you when you hear someone speak, you hear them speak literally. The words that they say are the words that they mean, so the definition of the words they're using is making what they're saying. But the complexity of human interaction and human language is that I can say one thing, but if I use a tone of voice, I mean the complete opposite, or 5 different things at once, and that's very confusing for someone who doesn't hear those. They hear the tones, but it doesn't just click. So with someone who isn't on the spectrum, they're gonna feel things. They're gonna instinctively feel these cues, these social patterns, but they won't have to think through them. They'll feel through them. And so I found myself struggling to connect with them. So then I said, okay, Hector, it's time to just be very mechanical and explain things step by step by step. And when I started not using too many metaphors and not speaking so much through my facial expressions to give clarity to my words, they started to progress. and they began to understand social dynamics on a mechanical level because that is the language that they speak. So as I understood autism was that it's an overstimulus and their mind has trouble computing everything at once and needs to step by step learn things. Then once it's understood, it's very firmly understood and you gain like a blueprint of situations. But the problem with social situations is that they vary. One situation, a girl is talking this way and saying these words and it means X. And then another situation, a girl is saying the exact same words or acting kind of the same way, but there's one little detail differently: her body language, her eye contact, her vocal tonality, and her specific disposition, her personality, the way that she feels about the words she's using and the way that she uses language can mean completely different things. And so building this compendium in your mind, this library of this means this, that means that, this leads this way, that leads that way, I should talk about this, I should talk about that. It's going to constantly evolve in the moment, and the more people you add to it, the more that the overstimulation can confuse someone who is on the spectrum. Then I understood they don't read body language and they don't hear vocal tonality, or they hear it but they don't understand always what it signifies, and facial expressions are very difficult for those on the spectrum. For themselves also, it's not, what I used to believe is that people on the spectrum were less emotional. But what I learned is that it's not that they lacked our emotions, they didn't know how to express them, and they would come out in ways that I would perceive as random or strange or incongruent. But then I understood, okay, if they have trouble reading them, well, maybe they even have trouble expressing them, because they don't have that natural instinct to give that certain facial expression when they're feeling a certain way, or move the body in a way that just naturally signifies X emotion or Y feeling. So when you are spending time with someone who's on the spectrum, for instance, from a girl's perspective, if I'm trying to teach a client, she's going to see my client expressing himself with his face, and it's not going to be clear what he's feeling. And sometimes she's going to become confused, and he's going to need to be computing in the moment how to express the way that he is feeling. And so because he can't express himself with his face or with his vocal tonality, a lot of times what's going to happen with someone on the spectrum is that when they speak, they're going to speak very literally, and they're going to speak with a monotone, and they're not going to have deviations and variations in the way that they speak that other people have naturally. They're not going to express their facial expressions in a way that's very understood to others, body language. And this disconnect between someone on the spectrum and someone off the spectrum is, the person off the spectrum is, especially a woman, is going to just feel something is off and then just assume something's wrong. Not a lot of women are going to take the time to think, oh, is he on the spectrum? Most women aren't even going to understand what autism is past just knowing what the word is. And we would hope that everyone would be completely understanding of everyone and take the time to understand everyone, but that's very impractical. So this is a raw reality that you must accept, because everyone suffers from this. It's not just people on the spectrum. Everyone is misunderstood on some level, whether they have a certain type of brain or a certain type of mind or a certain type of body. There's going to be many instances where people feel misunderstood and others aren't going to take the time to understand them. And so what you're going to have to take is a proactive approach where you recognize that there's nothing wrong with you, but other people might perceive what is different about me as something that is strange. And I'm not asking you to change who you are, because I don't even think that's possible, though the mind is very powerful, so who knows. But I don't want you to be ashamed of who you are. I just want you to learn how to express yourself in the ways that others can understand. Because if you want to date women, and that's what this video is for, it's for men who are on the spectrum who want, but also women, and I'll mention one girl who I learned a lot about autism from. I'm teaching you how to, even though you are on the spectrum, understand mechanically how others are communicating and learn how to move yourself and express yourself in a mechanical fashion so that you can, so to say, speak the language of others. And so I want you to take control of your autism and to use it to your advantage to gain a mastery over the mechanical understanding of social dynamics, and then to apply them so that when you are spending time with a woman, she's still going to feel there's something different about you, but that difference is going to turn from what you may feel is a curse, and it will become a blessing, and it will make you interesting and different. But you will still appeal to her on the primal levels that make someone attracted to you. So there are a few directions that I want to go into, and one is what I just mentioned, delivering yourself in a primal fashion and having her feel you on a primal level, because attraction, as much as you would want it to be intellectual, and there's many times in life when I wanted her to appreciate me purely on an intellectual level, a lot of attraction is physical. This doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be the best looking guy, the most in shape guy, the most fashionable man, the tallest man, the strongest man. Those things will help and will go in those directions, but it doesn't require you to be the best. It just requires that you build yourself with that in mind and make yourself more physically appealing and learn how to express yourself physically. Then, because what that's going to do is it's going to make women aroused by you. It's going to make women attracted to you. They're going to feel sexually magnetized towards you. Then when it comes to actual interacting with them and speaking with them, you're going to have to learn how to speak their language, but in your own way. And that's going to require you to understand mechanically how social dynamics are working. Now, this video is going to only give you a blueprint for how to go in those directions. For me to completely teach you social dynamics from a mechanical understanding would require a lot of time. But if this video is successful and it helps those who are on the spectrum, then I could make more to help you and go into specific scenarios and answer specific questions that you have from my understanding of the perspective of someone on the spectrum, and to help you in more nuanced situations. But this video is more of a blueprint to give you a macro understanding of where you need to go to find more success with women in general. Okay, so starting with the primal attraction that women have for men. What I suggest you focus on is what I call fundamentals. This is what I teach everyone, but I want you to focus very strongly on these because you are, well, I've went over that. You are inherently lacking a little bit in how to express yourself physically so that women can feel you. So what your fundamentals are the way that you look and the way that you move. So first, I want you to, now what's going to happen is you're going to have to emulate and you're going to have to copy others, because if I said, for instance, find someone who is fashionable and copy their fashion, well, you might not know inherently what it means to be fashionable, so you can't even get started. What I suggest you do is you find someone, it could be a TV actor, movie star, someone you know in real life, someone who you see has objective success with women or objective attraction from women, and emulate the way that they dress. You're gonna have your own preferences, so pick of course what you prefer, but try to emulate someone who is successful. Try to dress how they dress. Then watch the way that their body is built. What are some body types that are very attractive to women? What I can tell you very simply is you want to have some degree of muscle. Enough where she can see your biceps, she can see your chest, you have some definition in your abs, and you have some mass to you, but then you have a low enough body fat percentage that you are not too big. You're big, but you're cut. So you're gonna need to go to the gym, and you're gonna need to lift weights, and you're gonna need to have a good diet. This is going to be a process that is going to take a long time, especially if you're starting from zero. But if you invest yourself in that, in making yourself have a better body, working on your fashion by emulating someone who objectively has success with women. You can then copy the haircut and the facial styling of someone who is objectively considered by a lot of women to be attractive and successful with women. So get a haircut like they have a haircut. If you can grow a beard, I can't, so beard fashion is useless for me. Learn how to trim your facial hair in the way that works for them. Add those together, and that will be the starting point on a purely physical level of you making yourself more attractive to women. This is a step that you cannot skip. Secondly, you need to understand the expressions physically. You can look good, but then once you're interacting with a woman, you need to express yourself physically well. So you need to emulate the hand gestures of people who objectively have success. This could be comedians, it could be actors, it could be someone on YouTube, it could be someone in your real life, someone that you find to be objectively interesting or charismatic, and the way that you see this is because you see that they have success. Watch the way they move their hands when they speak, certain words that they move their hands with, certain vocal tonalities that they move their hands with. Watch the metaphorical pictures that they draw with their hands, and you'll begin to understand that people are speaking with their hands and they're drawing pictures. Like when I'm speaking, I'm using my hands. I'm thinking about it to a certain degree, but some of it is just learned. But for a long time, I was teaching myself. See, like as I'm moving my hands like this, it kind of expresses that I am kind of going on and I'm trying to finish what I'm about to say. And see mechanically how these appendages work to create a more full picture of how I'm expressing myself. Then, very importantly, it's the facial expressions. You're gonna have to learn how to express yourself with your face. This is going to require a lot of trial and error. I'm laughing because I myself have spent a lot of time mastering my face, so to say, and learning how to contort it in ways that accentuate the words that I'm using and to more accurately deliver the message that I want to deliver. So when I'm kind of being silly and I want to be more absurd with my humor, I open my eyes really widely and I have a very extravagant smile and I have very wild expressions where I move from one emotion to another and my eyes are moving this way and that way. And I played with my face as an instrument and learned that it was just as important as my body, as my hands, and as my voice in delivering the emotions that I wanted to deliver. And the emotions that you want to deliver are fun and interesting and sexy, but those words in and of itself might not mean much to you. So like I said, you need to emulate those who are successful and try what they do and see how it works in certain situations. Now, when you combine this physical being and physical expression, what you're going to get is a feedback from women and from people. And you're gonna see if women are wanting to spend time with you, if they're smiling at you, if they are engaging in you and asking questions to you and they're talking to you a lot, or other men want to talk to you and they want to get to know you more and they want to spend time with you, you're seeing objectively that what you're doing is working. Now, it might work with certain people in certain situations and certain people in different situations and not with this person. What's going to happen is from all that feedback, you're going to start to kind of build a library in your mind of every social situation with every possible variable that you keep in mind. I moved this way, I said this, she said this, I said this with this vocal tonality, she responded in that way, what did it mean? And you learn purely through trial and error. As I talked about with the story of the kid in my Taekwondo dojang, you learn step by step by step by step. Now this goes into my final point, a mechanical understanding of social dynamics. You have both a curse and a blessing. In this particular way, I think it is a blessing, because what's going to happen is that you are going to eventually, if you do the work, this is going to take a lot of work, and to be completely frank, you're going to have to do a lot more work than the average person, but I think you already knew that. So you need to accept your fate, and you need to accept that challenge, because in the end you are still a man. And so you need to see this as an adventure. But if you take this call and you follow it, and you go and you learn through a lot of pain and rejection, but hopefully a lot of success too, a very complete understanding of many different social dynamics and social situations, and you begin to understand what women like almost on an objective level, what's going to happen is that you will have a repository, a library in your mind that is so much more accurate and honest than what 99.9% of the population could possibly come to understand, because you built the foundation of your knowledge like this. Whereas most people take a shortcut using their intuition and their emotional instincts. So while they may short-term have a lot more success and not have to do as much work as you, because you had to do more work, in the end, you will be stronger and you will be smarter. But you will never understand social situations on their level. But your brain will become sharp and you will gain an intellectual instinct for social dynamics. And I believe in the end, and I have seen some examples of successful men who are on the spectrum, you're going to have a good life and an interesting life. And you are going to have success with women, and you're going to have sex. And if you want to have a girlfriend or a wife or the mother of your children, you can achieve that. But you're going to have to take action, and you're going to have to do a lot of work. And speaking of this mechanical understanding of expressions and how to physically express yourself, but from a mechanical knowledge perspective, I was talking to a very beautiful, very, very intelligent woman, and she has autism, and she is a viewer of mine. And we've talked a lot extensively about love and sex and relationships and all of that from the perspective of someone on the spectrum. And I asked her very simply, I said, okay, here's my understanding of how your mind works and what you're thinking while you're in social situations. When you're talking to someone, are you thinking about every little detail of what you're doing? How you're moving your hand, the angle at which you're moving your head, the way that you're making your face move and contort, your vocal tonality. And at the same time, as you're moving all of these moving parts at the same time, you're also watching their, if you think of the body as an automaton, you're watching their automaton, you're watching their flesh robot move and how it's expressing itself and how you two are interacting with the mind controlling the body. I asked her very simply, are you thinking about every little detail as you're speaking and watching every little detail of theirs as they are acting and speaking? She said, yes. I'm thinking about everything all the time, and I don't normally know exactly what to do. I just make the best guess I can based on what I know and what I've observed. And so I understood completely, as much as I could, that someone on the spectrum is coming from this perspective of needing to move every little detail and be aware of it and mindful of it and deliberate with it, but they're kind of just guessing, and they are making the best estimate that they can possibly can to make themselves the most attractive that they can or most interesting and to connect with the person that they're speaking to. And so I felt with that conversation like I was able to make this video for you and was able to completely understand as much as I could. I'll never fully understand, but as much as I could, what it's like to be from that perspective and have that type of mind. And so I'm saying this to you as someone who has heard it from someone who has autism, that we have to break things down to this level of detail and minutia. And that's going to be difficult, but it is something that you can control. So make yourself as objectively attractive as possible by emulating those who are objectively successful. Learn how to express yourself physically with your facial expressions and vocal tonality, and see your body and your face and your hands and your voice as instruments that can be perfected. And the way they are perfected is you see your audience and you see how they react to the way that you move and the way that you emote and the way that you speak. And as you do that, you make yourself more attractive and you express yourself more attractively, you are going to gain a very step-by-step trial and error understanding of what is attraction, what makes you attractive, how to seduce women, and it will be very thorough and very complete. And I think that you can carry that knowledge far further than the average person could. And you can be successful and have the dating life and the sex life and the romance life and relationships that you want in this life. So, as I said, this is a general blueprint, and to teach you all of seduction on a mechanical level, well, we would be here for a long, long time. But if you enjoyed this video, leave a comment, ask me a question, give me a suggestion for where you would like me to possibly make more videos about those who are on the spectrum and how to help you more. And yeah, hope you appreciated it. And it was my pleasure. And this is Hector Castillo from girlschase.com. Please like the video, please ring the bell, please subscribe, and I'll see you very soon. Ciao.